The energy levels might be low, but the fantasy hockey news is red hot and with no shortage of topics to cover. On the Wednesday edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, we got to get to serious brass tacks and break down all of the news that you need from around the league. Jack Hughes out. Lightning making big moves and the Canadiens on a serious heater. Let's also talk about bets and get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Buckle up and here we go, fantasy hockey heads. There is no shortage of top news from around the NHL that's impacting your squad. We're breaking it all down for you in 30 minutes or less on the Wednesday edition of your daily source for fantasy hockey news, the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Shout out to the everydayers holding us down, making us your first listen every single day. Steele, I got to keep this preamble so short and sweet. Jack Hughes out. Let's talk about it. Once again, this is a Devils team, made so many moves in the offseason. Their number one guy up front is out once again, done for the season. I want your take on this. Bjorkstrand, Yanni, Gourde, they're in a Tampa Bay Lightning uniform as of tomorrow night. I want your take on this as well. You and I haven't spoken about what this is going to mean. They gave up 2 first-round picks. There's a lot of fallout from this trade. Vitek Vanacek. How about what's going on in Montreal? A big signing for Jake Evans that we weren't able to get to earlier in the week. And, of course, a red-hot Habs team. We're not even talking about tonight's big-time betting board. Over to you first. We'll start with the Devils because there is a lot to get to here, and all of it's impacting teams pushing for the playoffs in that fantasy realm. So what do you think about this Jack Hughes situation? Once again, very serious injury for the young star.
Yeah, I mean, all fantasy hockey owners out there, we've been bombarded with this breaking news for the last few hours, the trade, the injuries, and everything you need to know in between that as well. And this is a huge blow for fantasy owners, including myself, who have Jack Hughes on their team. Obviously, for keeper formats, you're stashing him on the IR. You're going to be keeping him going into next year. Like we saw with Matthew Tkachuk on year-to-year leagues, you're dropping Jack Hughes at this point. He's completely done for the season after season-ending shoulder surgery a couple of days ago. And it's a massive blow to the New Jersey Devils, especially going into the postseason. You have the Columbus Blue Jackets who are nipping on their heels right now. They're 4 points back of third in the Metropolitan, and the Blue Jackets have 2 games in hand. And losing your best player, offensive player, at this point in the season, there's potential that the Devils maybe slide down into a wild card spot. But for me, their season's over. I really don't see them even contending for the Stanley Cup this season. And I'm not trying to completely write off the New Jersey Devils altogether. But as we know, when you go into the playoffs, the postseason, it's a different atmosphere. The level intensifies. Yes, the energy is up so many more notches than the regular season. And Jack Hughes is crucial to them. Even just getting to an Eastern Conference Finals berth as well. So for me, looking at the new updated Stanley Cup odds, they've dropped down to plus 2,500 right now. I wouldn't bother betting on the Devils. I really don't think without Jack Hughes in the lineup, they can win the Stanley Cup.
Sheldon Keefe has his work cut out for him in a very big way. And this is where I immediately have to lean to their biggest addition in the offseason and their biggest addition in a long time in Jacob Markstrom. This is a veteran goaltender that was brought in here to win games. So if this team wants to be considered, and I totally agree with you, I don't see it. But if it does indeed happen, to me, it comes down to one player because this is a team that's already struggled offensively this season. I know they sit outside of the top 10 in both power play and goals for this season. And you know how important special teams are come playoffs. To me, it's Markstrom that has to step in a big way. It's obvious that you would look to all the secondary peripheral, the Jesper Bratz, all of those forwards, Nico Hischier and otherwise to step up. To me, if they actually want to make noise, and the Rangers are also coming in hot steel, this is going to be a bit of a mess for the New Jersey Devils. So I agree with you, but it's Jacob Markstrom that really has to step up. And immediately, fantasy-wise, Dawson Mercer is now on that second line with Andre Palat and Thomas Tatar. right away a team, and I want to bring that up because this isn't just lip service. I know for a fact that they have been struggling in the offensive categories.
Yeah.
But again, just fantasy GMs with Jack Hughes, obviously such a talented player. I think he had 70 points this season, and I know actually what he was doing so far, Steele, 27 goals led the team. 7 game-winning goals led the team. 229 shots on net led the team and led forwards in average ice time as well at just over 20 minutes. You can't replace it. Tap into Waiver Wire Monday. We'll have some options for you, and I'm just going to round out my point with that offensive punch that the Devils have been lacking. 13th in overall goals for. Not going to be good enough in the postseason when you're going head-to-head with some big-time clubs. I'm with you. I don't see it for them. There's going to be some fantasy juggling here immediately.
Yeah.
Dawson Mercer is a must-add for me if he's out there in your league, just based on the fact that they should still have a good chance to put up some points at least. Just another really tough injury for one of the faces of the league in the future.
It really is. And for me, at this point, when this happens to Jack Hughes, I always go back to what I've always said about this player and him being one of the best ranked and top ranked players fantasy hockey wise in the game. And I really do think as a hockey community, as fantasy hockey analysts, all of us who love doing podcasts and talk hockey and love watching the game, we really need to question and reconsider where he gets ranked in the preseason because of all these injuries, all the injury concerns he's been dealing with. This is the second season in a row. He is going to miss 20 plus games, 62 games this year, 62 the year before that. Yeah, he had 78 in 3 seasons ago, but 49, 56, and 61. It's not good enough. We know how skilled he is when he's in the lineup. We know he can be above point per game player, which we've seen over the last 3 seasons, 4 seasons. But this is a huge concern. If he can't stay in the lineup, that to me is a huge blow to his fantasy. And going into next year, we're going to get our boy Blake Creamer back on the podcast. And we're going to run it back, the 3 of us. Jack Hughes, JT Miller, the debate again. But look, this is to me what it falls back on. I have him on my team. He's going to remain on my IR in my keeper league. But there is potential that Jack Hughes gets traded going into next year. You can get a lot back in a trade for Jack Hughes, and that's a concern of mine.
That's a very interesting angle that we'll probably have to cover at a later date. There's just far too many topics for you and I to get to. We try and catch you guys in and out in 30 minutes every single day. There's a lot of other angles we'd like to cover, but you're a busy bunch of people out there, and we don't got time for hour-and-a-half podcast. Shout out to everyone out there. We're not hating, but this is the 30-minute source, and we got you covered. So, New Jersey Devils, though, Steele, to round this out, 72 points. That grip on that third and final wild card spot, it's slipping fast.
Good.
So, we're going to keep our eyes peeled on that. Let's talk quickly before we get to break, and we'll talk about it after the break. We'll also talk about what's going on with the Montreal Canadiens and Vitek Vanacek in Florida. Bjorkstrand, Yanni Gourde, now in the Tampa Bay Lightning roster. Once again, Yanni Gourde, a 2-time Stanley Cup champion. With the Tampa Bay Lightning, Steele, I'm going to hit you with my take quick, and then we can come back from the break, and you can hit me with what you think about it. Here's my thought on this. Yes, immediately we want to look at a team in the Tampa Bay Lightning, and this is what we do, and I know I do it all the time. I'm not trying to hate on people. Immediately a team that is 9-1-0, and they add 2 players that I know you and I kind of like, especially as like week-to-week stream options in the fantasy realm. Yanni Gourde and Oliver Bjorkstrand are bottom 6 players, and they paid 2 first-round picks for them. Is it a win-now move? 100%. Do the Tampa Bay Lightning now have the option to roll out their 3 or 4 very balanced lines? Yes, they do. But does that mean that this immediately takes them to the Stanley Cup? No, it does not. And I'm not exactly ready to run out there and add the Yanni Gourdes in, add the Bjorkstrands of the world before I see how it shakes out in Tampa, because things have worked real well of late in Tampa, and I just don't necessarily know what this means for the fantasy value of these 2 players. And if Tampa misses Steele and they paid 2 first-round picks for 2 guys who have also been kind of ho-hum this year, this might be a little bit of a swing for the fences and miss. They have swung for the fences in Tampa, and once again on paper, they're looking really dangerous. So I'm intrigued to hear what you have to say about that right after the break. I'm leaving you on the edge here. We're also going to talk about the Montreal Canadiens Thursday's bets. I got a parlay ready to ride. Steele and I will be back for Monday waiver wire special, which with these bodies dropping like flies, Steele, those episodes are becoming increasingly important. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, even if you miss the opening tip and want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback. You stay in the action. If you're looking for that bigger payout, you can even combine your bets into a same-game parlay. Steele and I are all over these same-game parlays of late. The only place to make them, it's with our friends at FanDuel, where right now, new customers to FanDuel get 150 bones in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com to join today for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day, Monday through Friday. 7:00 p.m. is when you can find our episodes this week. And then we'll get back to those morning drive episodes. 7:00 in the morning is when you can usually find it. Hit the subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Flip and I really do appreciate all that love and support. And Flip, to answer your question that you were alluding to with this trade, I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it from both sides of this trade.
I like it for both sides too.
Really like this. And obviously at first look, it is an overpay from the Tampa Bay Lightning side of things. They give up 2 first-round picks in 2026 and 2027, a second-round pick in 2025, and Mikey Isamon as well in return. Oliver Bjorkstrand, Yanni Gourde, and a 2026 fifth-round pick. For me, let's start with the Tampa Bay Lightning and break it down right now. While I do agree there might not be so much fantasy value with Yanni Gourde, I really like Oliver Bjorkstrand, a guy who has proven to be a 20-plus goal scorer in the NHL. 37 points this year in 61 games, has been a guy to get 50-plus points over the last 4 seasons as well. I think he's a good addition to the offensive group, and I do think he's actually projected to play on the second line with Anthony Cirelli and Brandon Hagel. So if he's getting top 6 minute, I'm absolutely taking a chance on Oliver Bjorkstrand. I actually already did pick him up in the casual league. Blake Creamer, our boy, picked him up in the competitive league. So he's already gone. He's off the waiver wire after that trade happened in both our fantasy Yahoo leagues.
Makes
sense.
That's
number one. I do have. I really like Bjorkstrand for that streamer week-to-week option, but I'm going to take a chance on him and see what he does with a really good offensive group in Tampa. And then Yanni Gourde, a guy who's been there with Tampa in the past. He's won 2 Stanley Cup championships with Tampa Bay in the back-to-back with them just a few seasons ago. To me, as much as of an overpayment it might be with those picks, and talking about those picks, the Tampa Bay Lightning don't have a first round until 2028. Regardless of that,
win now.
They've had a win now mentality since they were winning the Stanley Cups, 4 or 5 seasons ago. They still have Andrei Vasilevsky, one of the best goaltenders, Nikita Kucherov, who just continues to amaze us offensively, Jake Gensel, Braden Point, offensive weapons, and then Victor Hedman on the back end. They're going to be chasing cups until all 3 of those guys are gone. All 4 of those guys are gone in their lineup. So love the additions for the Tampa Bay Lightning, win now mentality, and they still have a chance of getting that first place in the Atlantic Division, only 3 points back of the Toronto Maple Leafs and Florida Panthers.
I think Julien Brisebois, the front office executive, the GM in Tampa, deserves some credit for never backing down and missing a single opportunity to make his team better, at least on paper. I guess I'm just a little bit wary of bringing in 2 guys that I know Bjorkstrand is, kind of humming along at what he does, and that's a good thing. And yeah, I'm really actually liking that opportunity on the second line. Just 2 first-rounders. Doesn't mean anything for fantasy. It doesn't mean anything for what it might be for the standings this year. I just wanted to throw a little bit of a wet towel, a damp rag, whatever you want. Just being a little bit of a hater here, I guess. However, With Tampa being 9-1 over the last 10, I think Brisebois is rewarding his boys on the ice, and that means good things for any fantasy piece that you can grab on this team. And yes, Bjorkstrand, I have to agree with you right now, at least till we see how things shake out. I think it's worth the ad. Go out there and grab yourself a piece of what's going on in Tampa. And if you don't like it, 9-1-0 should probably seal the deal for you. Quickly, Vitek Vanacek steal, just very quickly, because I do want to talk about the Montreal Canadiens a lot more. I just like this bit of a move from Bill Zito once again, shoring up what should be a team that makes a run at a cup. This is starting to get real interesting in the East. Things are tighter than ever, and I understand that Vitek Vanacek has been disappointing this season, but let's say that the Florida Panthers go on a little bit of a heater here, and they need to give Bob some rest. Vitek Vanacek is going to be a valuable day-to-day ad. He immediately goes from San Jose to Florida. Now, as a stream steal, as a guy that you want to fill in, let's say, and I know you've done this, you need to get those minimum goaltender starts in there. Vitek Vanacek went from a guy we're not paying attention to someone that you probably should. Although the Montreal Canadiens are a much hotter topic.
Yeah, a much harder topic indeed. And yeah, it's just one of those trades, obviously, after trading Spencer Knight to the Chicago Blackhawks. They have to bring in another goaltender as well, just to kind of fill in that spot right there. I can't even remember at what point in the season, but the Florida Panthers actually picked up Chris Drieger again, who was with the Florida Panthers years ago. So that is that's potentially an option as well. But just having that backup for Sergei Bobrovsky, it's obviously needed going into the postseason after giving up and trading away Spencer Knight. But yeah, let's get to the Montreal Canadiens. Big success for them recently. Another hot streak starting off the month of March very, very well. Going to be tough down the stretch as they still have a middle of the pack, above average, mediocre remaining schedule in the season right now, but putting up a really good performance, 5-game win streak. They are 1 point back of a wild card spot right now. This is going, we've been saying it all year, or at least for the last 2 to 3 months. This is going to come to the last game of the regular season for the wild card spot in the Eastern Conference. Lane Hutson playing phenomenal right now. Montreal, do you actually think they can get into a playoff spot and be that final team in the Eastern Conference?
I think this is going to be one of those situations where, the Montreal Canadiens have just immediately gone from sellers to, at the very least, holders. Like, they're not selling off pieces now. Lane Hutson becomes the fastest Canadian defenseman to reach 50 points, 50 career points. This is starting to be something special with this kid steal. But to answer your question, I guess to me, it's Montreal, and they really are under that magnifying glass, and everyone loves to talk about Toronto as, the media melting pit, and the pressure is always on. The pressure is also equally as high in Montreal. I don't see this roster as one that is just quite ready yet to make that noise. Have they played well? Yes. Have they overachieved? Have they punched above their weight class? I think that's where I put my finger on this club. However, shout out to Jake Evans. Shout out to a player that secures his biggest his first real contract. There's value to be had here. That's what I wanted to say, Steele. Get yourself a little bit of action of the Canadiens while they're hot. I don't see it for them. I guess that's what I wanted to kind of wrap up my point with on this team, even though I believe they have 5 straight victories, Steele. So I don't mean to sound like a hater. 5 straight victories, 6-4-0. They still have allowed more goals than most teams, minus 20 differential. If you look at the other teams in the mix around them, that's also the worst. So when I'm talking about Columbus, New York, Detroit, Ottawa, I'm probably going to lean to all 4 of those clubs ahead of Montreal. But right now, Hutson deserves love. Jake Evans' contract deserves a little bit of talk. And there are some fantasy pieces that you can catch right now on this team while they're surging.
Yeah, I mean, Jake Evans, 4-year deal, $11.4 million. We've mentioned him on waiver wires over the last month or so. We've mentioned the fantasy value with a lot of these players. Patrick Laine, the power play has been very good. Nick Suzuki, a guy obviously who's not going to be out there.
Caulfield.
He's going on an absolute tear right now. The point streak he has in at least the last 5 games. I know the point streak's longer, but he's putting on a good performance. Cole Caulfield reaches 30 goals for the first time in his career. Everything is it's turning out all right in Montreal. I could see them being a surprise 8th seed in the Eastern Conference. But I agree with you. I think it's a little early. I think regardless if they do make it into the playoffs, they're gonna get whipped around pretty good, whoever they face in that first round matchup. Big time bets, lots of interesting games going on Thursday night. We're gonna break all of that down when we come back after the break. Welcome back. We're getting to big time bets. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen Monday through Friday. Again, Flip and I really do appreciate all that love and support. That's why we do what we do and try to give you some winning picks throughout the week. Flip, this is an interesting Thursday night for me. A lot of heavy favorites going up right now.
Yep.
A lot 100%. Of minus 240s, 250s, even a minus 420 out there in that Avalanche Sharks game. So I'm looking at some of these. I'm looking at these heavy favorites right now, but I'll throw it over to you. What's the biggest or most intriguing game you're looking at right now?
I wouldn't say there's actually one that jumps off the page, but the other night, I took 2 heavy favorites on the money line, and they weren't even that heavy. You smash them together, Steele. I'm not trying to get crazy, and every bettor out there has their different approach. We're just trying to highlight the games that we like, and we foresee some winners. Do what you'd like with the value. Do what you'd like with the breakdown. So I guess I'm going to cop out and say, Steele, I got 3 home money line favorites, but the numbers back me up, and I'll go quick here and spit them out. First of all, Carolina at home to Boston, 6-2-2 in their last 10. We talked about Boston. Carolina on the money line, first pick, second pick. Tampa Bay on the money line against the Buffalo Sabres. Just when we thought the Buffalo Sabres were going to perhaps make a step, they get dusted by the San Jose Sharks in somewhat depressing 6-2, maybe not somewhat, very depressing 6-2 fashion. That's tough to bounce back against when you have to travel into Amalie Arena and one of the hottest teams, if not the hottest team in the NHL, Steele, that also just told their room, you're for real. We believe in you. We're going to sacrifice the future because guess what? We think we're drinking out of Lord Stanley, and here comes in 2 very sound offensive veterans. This team is going to blow the doors off of the Sabres tonight, so I'll get my lock of the night out of the way early. Tampa Bay on the money line. At home are going to blow the doors off of the Sabres. Book that one and put it in writing. Florida Panthers as well, Steele, at home, doing somewhat similar things, adding Seth Jones. And I know Spencer Knight, but they have shown that they believe in this roster once again. Bill Zito augmenting with Vanacek. Minus 250 for the Cats. Minus 240 for Tampa Bay. Minus 260 for Carolina. I don't really care because smashed together, I'm almost tripling my money anyway. So you chuck a little 30 piece on there, Steele, a little 35 piece, and I'm really feeling it. Or you take all 3 of those and add them into whatever you're doing. 3 heavy favorites on the money line, but I love all 3.
Those are really good picks. Yeah, heavy favorites. I'm there with a few of those picks as well. I think the one that kind of I want to stay away from is that Hurricanes-Bruins game, even though they are heavy favorites at home. I just think Boston could still, David Pastrnak, the goaltending. But I will go ahead and also take the Hurricanes on the money line. Just one of those games maybe to stay away from. For me, I agree with you wholeheartedly on the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm actually going to take them on the puck line against the Sabres. The Sabres have just been playing some garbage hockey recently, offensively, defensively, hanging their goalie out to dry right now. I'm comfortable at home, especially after this trade, taking the Lightning on the puck line at plus 100. And then as well, going to take the Avalanche on the puck line against the San Jose Sharks. There's no juice whatsoever on the money line at minus 420. I'm comfortable with the Avalanche on the puck line at minus 162. They've won 10 straight against the Sharks. 8 of those have been by 2 or more goals. And then as good as the Montreal Canadiens have been, 5-game win streak, they're going into Edmonton. Oilers have been struggling. I would take the Oilers on the puck line. I'm not that ballsy right now. I'm going to take them on the money line, minus 275. Again, a lot of heavy favorites, but those are my 3 picks. Lock of the night, Avalanche on the puck line.
Yeah, hey, look, this is a situation that I think, we've said stretches of the season can get tough. I think stretches of the season also, when teams really show what they believe in the roster and their performance, this is teams being rewarded, right? For really good playing. And I think there you'll be getting some really good angles here. Even if it's at minus 200, 240, I think Tampa Bay here in this situation could be minus 450. That's how good they've been playing. So jump all over it, smash it together, dial the bet back, do whatever you want to do. We're trying to highlight winners, and I think we've been doing a decent job of that. However, lots more to come. We'll be breaking it down still Monday through Friday, all the way till that cup gets lifted. You're on mute, pal. You're back.
Mute. Well, get me at least once a week. We're back, but thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod. I'll make sure not to do that going into next week. Please share with your friends and family out there. It really does mean the world to Flip and I. We really do appreciate making it your first listen every single day. For your second listen, make sure to check out the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Once again, like always, Flip and I wish you good luck with your matchups, playoffs right around the corner, those big time bets. Let us know what hit and miss for you Thursday night, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.